Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Freya Schmidt and I am a 2020 graduate of the Faculty of Kinesiology and an alumna of the Dinos women's basketball and track and field teams. Especially in these times of physical distancing and virtual connections, I like to think about who I'm sharing this space with, both near and far. We are broadcasting from Calgary, which is located on the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. The University of Calgary is situated on land adjacent to where the Bow River meets the Elbow River, and that the traditional Blackfoot name of this place is McKinstis, which we now call the City of Calgary. Thank you for joining us today for the first edition in our Dinos Diversity series presented by ATB Financial, where we will be discussing anti-Black racism in sports. This is just one of more than 25 virtual programs being held throughout September for Alumni Month. Our alumni's passion, vision, and involvement in the community here and around the world elevate UCalgary's reputation as a global leader and change maker. In celebration of our 190,000 strong UCalgary alumni community, we have curated an exciting selection of programs featuring alumni who will inspire you, conversations that will inform you, and expertise that will guide you. I encourage everyone to check out the entire Alumni Month schedule at alumni.ucalgary.ca/alumni-month. We have a great panel joining us today, and all of us are either current Dinos student athletes or alumni of our varsity programs. I'll let all of our panelists introduce themselves in a moment. Over the course of the next hour, you'll hear the personal experiences and perspectives of our panelists from their lives in and out of sport. Due to the nature of this discussion panel, panelists have been offered counselling resources through the UCalgary community, the Wellness Centre on campus. Due to the impact this discussion could have on our listeners and participants, I would like to inform everyone of the mental health resource for those joining us from the Calgary area, which is the Distress Centre. Visit distresscentre.com for more details. Anyone joining us from elsewhere, please don't be afraid to reach out to the services and resources in your area. We will wrap up with some question and answer time at the end. If you have questions, please type them into the QA box at the bottom of your screen. We appreciate all of your questions, but please be advised that due to our limited time, we may not be able to answer all of them. A recording of today's program will be available on the Alumni Month website by the end of the week. There may be parts of this hour that are not easy to listen to for our potential allies. Thank you in advance for listening, parking any discomfort, and staying checked in. There may be parts for our Black community that are potentially relived, resurfaced, and tough to listen to. Thank you for being present, and let us all stay together, supporting one another, not only in this Zoom, but in each of our lives outside of the Zoom as well. Okay, let's get started with our panelists. So first of all, we're just going to introduce everyone. So we'll start with Jared, who is joining us from the Netherlands, and I believe it is 2 a.m. where you are. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me being here. I'm excited to be here, so thank you.
Amazing. And next up, we have Temi.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Temi. And next, we have Anton and Ruth. Anton?
Good morning or afternoon or late night, Jared, there at 2 a.m., my man.
Wonderful. And last but not least, we have Ruth.
Hello. Thanks for having me here.
Amazing. Okay, so to start off, Jared, if you could just give us a really brief background, we'll just go to intros, just a background of you as an alumni of Dinos, what you're up to now.
So I graduated in 2015 with a Bachelor of Arts in Communication Studies major from University of Calgary, of course. And I've been playing professional basketball overseas since then. So this is my 6th year professionally. I played in Portugal for 2 years. I went to Spain for a year. I was in France for 1 year. I was in Finland last year. And this year, I just got out to Holland like maybe 5 weeks ago. So that's kind of been my life. And, in the summertime, I've been trying to, be in touch with my community back home in Winnipeg, like where I'm originally from, with, basketball camps and engagements. And, I created a scholarship in my name for my high school for a student, to help pay for fees and stuff like that. So that's kind of been my life the past 5-6 years. The time goes fast, but having the opportunity to speak with you guys and, get back in touch with, some of the alumni is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. Years go by quickly, and it's hard to, always stay in touch and be involved in things. So this was a great opportunity to get back, and I'm excited to have this discussion with the rest of you guys.
For sure. Thank you again. And how are you feeling? Are you wired? Do you have a Red Bull nearby?
I'm good. Everything is good. I thought I was going to be more tired, but, I had some rest earlier and got my water with me, so I'll be all right.
Good to hear. Good to hear. You wouldn't be able to tell. You look great. So.
Thank you.
And Temi, if you could just give us a brief intro of who you are, you as a Dino, and what you're up to nowadays.
All right, so I graduated in 2018. I was a multi-sport athlete. I played rugby, and I was also a wrestler during my time at U of C. I was also on the national wrestling team, and now I have taken my talents out to Victoria, BC, and I'm now playing on the national sevens team. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here and, have a chat with everyone. And, my main aim with all of this is just to open conversations about what being a true ally is and what that actually does for a person of color or a Black person, and how, being there as an ally doesn't just mean on the field of sport, but also off the field. Being there for your Black teammates or your Black or your teammates of color off the field, and really believing and being a part of their lives outside of sport, and not holding their value to sport is, really important.
That's huge for sure, and we'll definitely be touching on that today, so thank you. And Anton, a little intro and what you're up to now, and you as a Dino.
Yeah, well, I graduated close to Jared, I was done 2015, but technically didn't get my degree in 2016, Bachelor of Commerce in Finance. Didn't get to do exciting things, travel across the globe like Temi aired here, but moved into the corporate world right after school. So I work for the commercial banks here now. So what a lot of my time is spent out of work is actually back to the community and coming at some of the local schools here as well. I should Joan Cardinal Schubert. I'm one of the linebacker coaches and co-defensive coordinators, so I'm spending lots of my time with the community. And I'm excited to, share stories with everyone. And, as Jared said, reconnect with the alumni and really just tackle this topic that we're talking about today, because it's very real. And that's all I've been up to for the time being, and would be doing, but COVID happened, so.
Yeah. Thanks, Anton. And last but not least, Ruth, if you should just give us a little intro and just a brief, comment on what this discussion means to you.
Yeah, my name is Dinos Athletics. I'm a first year for Dino, so just getting right into it. I was born in Manchester, England, and then moved here when I was about 2 years old. A lot of people know my brothers, Sam and Elijah Athletics. That's mainly how I'm known by. You're like, oh, you're Elijah's sister, you're Sam's sister. Yeah, pretty much that. I'm really hoping that this discussion and really just is an eye-opening experience for some people, and to let them see different values, different beliefs, and things that we things that we encounter daily in our lives, and for them to really just open up their hearts to hearing how we feel and understanding it more instead of just listening, because there's only listening can get you only so far. So it's now just the understanding part, and I'm really hoping that that's what we can get to people, and as well as just educate everyone as well. So yeah.
For sure, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here. I know all of us are busy with work and training, and obviously the mental side. This has obviously been a very different time in our lives, not only with this movement, but also a pandemic, and that the impact on that for everyone. So today means a lot for people listening, for us in here. So I just wanted to firstly just really appreciate that. So another thank you. But I think we should just, I guess, quote unquote, dive straight in and just get to it with this discussion panel. We've got some talking points that we've all kind of been through. So I guess we'll go right up with, firstly, what was the time in your sporting career where you felt as though your race was a factor in how someone treated you? And I know, Temi, I know you wanted to speak on this one, but if we all will obviously, speak to this.
Yeah, so just to get right into it, in my my early junior high wrestling, in the beginning of my wrestling career, I was always one of, if not the only, Black kid wrestling, or even the Black girl wrestling. And I always heard comments like, oh, like, you know, you're so good because you're Black, or you only won because you're Black. And I could see it in my opponents' faces. I didn't need to be told that. Stepping onto the wrestling mat, I could see the fear and terror. And I'm in grade 8, probably 13, 14 years old. And during those times, like, your wrestling matches are organized based on weight class and age grade and all of that stuff. So I was usually the shortest person in my age and in my classes. So it was kind of crazy to me to hear them, you know, hear the things that people were saying, like, oh, you're so strong, you're so big. But I'm one of the smallest people. We're all in the same weight class here. We're all in the same age group. But, you know, obviously my skin color, my Blackness made me look like I was 6 foot tall at 13 in grade 8. So one of the defining moments for me at that early time was at one of my meets. I was waiting for my last opponent. It was kind of getting close to the end. And my coaches are looking for my opponent. I'm looking for my opponent. My mom comes in to the gym because she came to pick me up. And she's telling me, oh, there's a girl outside. She's crying on the phone saying, Mom, like, I don't want to wrestle this next girl. She's Black, she's big, like, I can't do it. Please come pick me up. And it was crazy because I, again, very confused because she looked bigger than I did. And here she was on the phone crying because she didn't want to wrestle me because I was Black. What ended up happening was, on certain occasions, my coaches would ask me to wrestle up a weight class, to wrestle bigger girls, because they thought I could do it and that I was strong enough to do it. So I mean, it did help my confidence a little bit when I was starting with wrestling, knowing that I could pretty much destroy and beat girls easily. And that's part of what kept me in the sport. But at the same time, it was a little bit of a confidence knocker, because you hear the things like, you only won because you're Black, or you're only strong and better than me because you're Black, and that gets to you eventually.
For sure it would. And it's such an age, you said that was when you were 13, 14, that all?
Yeah, 13, 14 years old. It's pretty young.
That's so young. And I bet at that time too, you're not thinking of it in a way that you do now, but it still had such an impact on you.
Oh yeah, for sure. spent a lot of time now as I've gotten older, kind of just thinking about the experiences I've had and realizing how much more of an impact they did have on me than I actually thought.
Yes, and just piecing those together and it all just building more of a picture too. That's
For sure.
You know, you build a picture, but it's one that you don't ever want to have to piece together.
Yeah, like wrestling is just in the aspect of wrestling, because I've also played other sports, but wrestling is one that once you've kind of been labeled as like the strong or powerful one or the endurance one, you can last the whole round and, you know, pull something out of your hat or whatever. Because of these experiences and because of the, you know, the label that I'd been given, everyone saw me as that strong, powerful person. And that was always what I had to be when I showed up on the mat. I couldn't be anything else. If I looked like I wasn't being as strong or powerful as I could be, some refs actually use that against me to, you know, call me as being passive and award a point to my opponent because it didn't look like I was doing what I should be doing because of what they expected from me, just based on, you know, what I've been labeled as.
Wow, I didn't. One, that's wow for many reasons. Not only did I not know that rule, but for that to be so multidimensional,
yeah,
that blows my mind. Did anyone else, Jared, Ruth, Anton, have anything to speak to on that talking point there?
I'll say something. Like, just listening to your story, like, it brings up memories of things that I think some of us have probably all experienced at some point. Like, initially, you know, it was tough for me to think of an instant where something like that happened. But I do remember when I was younger, you know, teenager, you know, you would hear this similar things too. Like, you know, you're so fast because you're black, or you jump high because you're black, or, you know, you're quicker because, you know, you're black. It's the genes, you know, and I think like the way you took it is like you took it as motivation and you kind of, you know, try to use that as a way to, you know, be more competitive against older people and stuff like that. But at the same time, I know for myself, growing up, like, I would try not to take what other people say too deep. But at the same time, it's kind of like, no, like, I did this because I worked hard. You know what I mean? Like, I got here because I worked hard. You know, I got here because I put in the time. You know, even if I do have the genes, you know, it wasn't like I was sitting around doing nothing and, you know, I got this speed or I got this athleticism. So I think from your experience of what you just experienced, explained, I think it's a little more, you know, in depth and a little more extreme. But I do remember instances of, you know, you just hear those kind of comments like, oh, well, I mean, you're black, so, you know, obviously you're going to be stronger or you're going to be faster, you're going to be quicker. But it's like, well, we all have to work. I believe everybody has to work to get to a certain position they want to be in, right? So we should also get that credit for putting the work in, opposed to it's only because of our race or our genes or, you know what I mean? So.
For sure. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jared.
Well, I agree. I think there's a lot of stories that you tell me that brings up. Yeah. Yeah, that brings up a lot of things, a lot of memories and stuff. Sometimes we don't have a choice to take it as realization per se. You have to just kind of put it down and keep going. And I know for myself, for me is, you know, on the football field coming my senior year of high school, a lot of my like teammates and opponents too is like, oh, well, he's been able to make that tackle, he's black. Or, you know, he just has a God gift. Like, well, I just worked hard at the end of it. And, you know, I don't want people to look at that and say, oh, it's a genetic advantage or whatever. And sometimes on the other end, classroom, where, you know, we have to get to have a certain education to be student athletes. I've seen this in my side of it where, oh, well, how are you getting these good grades? And I've had people assume the classroom side where it's like, well, I don't understand how you're doing so well in this course. And so you must be getting help and stuff. There's no way you can be getting these kind of marks and performing on the field. Like, some things must be off here. And I was like, no, I just don't sleep. And that's what it comes to. And I think that it does, you think back and you just reflect on a lot of these things. It's like, it really does impact us. And I've said it before, is like, we're just because we're student athletes, we're mentally tough, and some degree of toughness is accelerated, but doesn't mean it doesn't have any less of an impact than it does have on us today, right? So that's all I add to that.
No, for sure. And just like you say, with that piece on the, you know, the toughness of it, and you look back and you're building these pieces together, and it's kind of that aspect of, yeah, you're looking back and thinking, oh wow, and then it makes you realize certain habits have been created for you, for us all. I know myself with, you know, lighter pigmentation, but as Black people, we have normalized going through those things that it's become so common that we can't even really pinpoint. Like, all of us, we have these examples, but then we're like, oh yeah, I guess we should reflect on these things, because it's a part of who we are, but it's not things that we should have to accept. And Ruth, did you have anything to add, or I presume these things resonate with you too?
Yeah, with me, I played soccer all my life, and then kind of did a little bit of track and field, just like sprints in junior high, and then a little bit in high school. And I think, especially in track, people are so quick to judge you on the color of your skin instead of your athleticism, and they take that into consideration, and they're just like, I've seen people whisper and be like, oh my gosh, she's Black, like I shouldn't even try, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, just because I'm Black doesn't mean I'm fast. Like, is other things to me besides my race. Like, you don't know me until you've actually talked to me. And it's just too many times where people they just judge you before they even know you. And it's kind of things that kind of like mess with your head. And even like when I was younger, like I didn't really know. So I would just like brush it off. I'd be like, oh, okay, like, yeah, whatever. Like, they can talk, like, whatever. Like, it is what it is. But as you get older, you start to learn, like, oh, okay, like I probably like should have said something at that moment.
Mm.
You don't know me, so don't talk about me, or unless you're talking to me. So like, just that type of stuff as well.
For sure. And that piece that you just mentioned there with the learning, you know, I think that it's also important for all of us, and for allies, for the Black community, everyone, to accept that no one can be an expert in this, because I cannot be any of you in these scenarios. We can all empathize, but I think it's also important that we all have these learning curves too. We're all at different points. So just that notion that everyone can learn more too, I think is important. And just a segue, I guess, just with what you were saying with race, the impacts and people's comments in track. So a few of you know I went from basketball to track and field, and I was okay. I like to think Jared maybe remembers, maybe not, as a medical red shirt my first year, but I was all right at basketball. I had 3 shoulder surgeries, switched to track, and I remember some of my first races, I was a longer sprinter too. Like, I was not a 60 meter, not a 100 meter. And at these meets, I was meeting people, this is only a couple years ago, and people were like, oh, like, you look fast, like, see you at the other end type of thing. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'm in a 100 as a warm-up for my 4. I'm not fast. And they're like, yeah, whatever. And it's like we have to prove these ridiculous things, like, just as you said. But that's just my little story of exactly that as well. So just our next talking point, we just have here, excuse me, how do you feel Black athletes are represented globally in sports or in your community? What changes would you like to see? So that's quite a broad question that, Jared, I think you would like to speak to for sure. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. I think from a global representation of Black athletes, I think a good put out there with like LeBron James, and when, you know, the news reporter was saying, you know, just shut up and play basketball. And I think we're looked at strictly as athletes, you know, and the thing is, like, a lot of these Black athletes have a voice, they have a following, right? So they do things in their community. They have fundraisers. They give back to their communities. They have business adventures. Some of them are very educated, but we don't look at that side of it. You know, I feel like globally, like we just look at the athletes. We look at the fame. We look at what they do on the court or the field, and we don't touch on, you know, some of the larger issues or some of the other things, ventures that they do. Like a lot of them have business ventures, you know, or a lot of them truly do give back to their communities and they're trying to make a difference, or a lot of them have fundraisers or scholarships under their names, or they have a lot of education. And because they have those things, I believe they have the value to speak on larger topics. And that doesn't mean every athlete. You know, I feel like where we're going now, like, you know, obviously I'm a basketball player, so I follow a lot of the basketball news going on. It's almost as if the Black athletes are put in a position where they have to be the ones speaking on racial injustice, and they have to be the ones that are going to figure out what to do and what not to do. But you got to remember, some of these athletes didn't go to school, you know, or some of them went to school for 1 year, or some of them aren't educated, but some of them are, you know, and I believe that they should be respected and given that voice. And I think it's something that's starting to change, you know, the past couple of years, you know, with a lot of athletes coming out and speaking on racial injustices within their communities and within the United States of America, where it's, you know, truly a serious issue. But I think globally, my opinion is that it's more just about specifically what they do as athletes, and that's it, opposed to, you know, other things that they bring to the table. And I feel like moving forward, we have to be taken at a more serious level, because I honestly feel like a deeper, you know, I don't want to touch into too many other things, but I feel like the deeper problem of that is going to be, we're only going to see Black people as entertainers or athletes or musicians, or, you know what I mean, opposed to lawyers, doctors, scientists, you know, accountants, you know, bankers, you know, business managers, you know what I mean? And some of these Black athletes have connections with those people, and it's important for them to be able to shed light on those connections and those things that they do in those different parts of the world. You know what I mean? Because if we don't, they're going to limit us to one domain. You know, they're going to put us in a box, and I don't think that's always fair.
Thank you for that. That's, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And just as you say, the kind of that box that resonates with me, just in that with conversations, obviously with current times, even before these times, I'm sorry, I've always tried to kind of to challenge these prescribed boxes, and you lot may or may disagree with this, but even down to things like hiking, down to things like fishing, you know, things like that, where it's like, oh, those are white people things, you know. These boxes, I think it's so important to be very conscious of what we are limiting ourselves to as well. Just as you say, so the bigger picture of, you know, business ventures, of education, of these different professions that are prestigious in those realms, but also I think even on the micro level of people's character, what we do, our hobbies, those things too, you know, just not allowing a box to limit us is what I'm trying to say, and what I think that you touched on, which I think is really important. Did anyone else want to speak? Anton, was that you?
I did. Yeah, I did. That's a really good point, Jared, in terms of the box. Like, you know, on another flip side of it is, because of this box, sometimes it's actually put us in, can we speak out about it? And I think the perfect example is Colin Kaepernick. Before kind of everything that's where we're at today, where we're getting to a more of awareness, and you're seeing a lot of NFL players take a knee at the national anthem, Colin was the only one that did that. He was the only one that did that. He was cut from the 49ers. He hasn't been back since, and there's been a lot of controversy around that. And, you know, for what? For trying to get attention to something that is super important for our society today. And because of that box, what I think's happened is, it's really put like, well, can I speak out about this? How are people going to receive us? It's like, am I going to lose my value as an athlete? And there's more to Black athletes than just whether you're on the court or the field or the pitch or whatever that is, or on the mats. It really has, on the other side of it, really from a point of, you just see me as an entertainer, as you said, but also when I do feel something that's not right and I take a stand for it, I'm just going to lose it all, because that's how the world sees me. And like I said, when LeBron James speaks up to shut up and dribble, that's where your role is in society. And it's more than that. And we're taking steps to get better, but there's still a lot of work to do from that perspective.
For sure.
Can I add on to that?
Yes, yeah.
I just think that exactly what he said about the Colin Kaepernick one, they're so quick to dismiss the problems than to come up with a solution. No one really wants to talk about it because we're not comfortable talking about it, and that's because we haven't talked about it in schools. We haven't educated the youth about it enough, and that people now, when we bring up racist things, everyone's like, oh, okay, like like they're too scared to talk about it because they're not educated enough, and everyone wants to shut it down as quick as they can. Like even in soccer as well, there's people shouting racial slurs from the stands, there's people shouting on the field, and the refs aren't doing anything. They're just saying it's fine, play on. And that gets to the point where, what else can we do? We've protesting peacefully didn't work. We've rioted, they called us animals. Like, there's only so much we can do, and then it's time for people to actually start to open their ears, open their hearts, and start to understand and listen. And I think right now that's what we need, instead of everyone shutting it down and everyone being too scared to talk about it.
For sure. And just when you keep saying shutting it down, I think, just to maybe segue, I think cancel culture has become quite the concept in these times. And also just with what you're saying, open their eyes, open their hearts as well. I think it's vital that people, it's not just about empathy, it's about compassion. It's not this race war. It's everyone against racist. It's everyone for equality. We're all for equality. It's not anyone against anyone specifically. You know what I'm trying to say? So I think that's a really important point for sure. Temi, did you have anything to add on?
No, I mean, I just what everyone has kind of said just is definitely true. And I mean, everyone has said everything, so I don't want to, beat the same horse, but yeah.
No, for sure. We have got, so a question in the chat box is just, what could coaches or those in athletic leadership positions do to help Black athletes with these issues? And that, not that it's funny, but that is actually one of our questions, so we can move straight on to that. And our next talking point here is, how do you think Black coaches or team staff improve the experience for Black athletes? Excuse me. What changes in representation would you like to see in coaching? So with that talking point, if we just respectfully go on to that question of, what could coaches or those in athletic leadership positions do to help Black athletes with these issues? If anyone had something right away, then go for it.
I'll start off, I guess. Not just being a coach in the community, but also, having a lot of Black coaches in my career. I would say from the player's perspective, what it does for a player's psyche is bigger than people think it is. A lot of this, you may continue to have heard, is when we walk out onto the field, to the court, to the pitch, whatever it is, we're usually the only Black athlete there. We're the only Black person within miles outside of your family who's there cheering you on. But when you're surrounded like other individuals and they're not Black, they don't have the same experience as you, that can be very low road. And I think that having Black coaches within the staff is very crucial, because I can look a Black coach in the eye and I can actually say a lot of things. I can actually be able to be, for lack of a better word, upfront about everything I'm feeling, and it won't get dismissed. instead of myself looking at another coach being dismissed, I'll probably get, it's like, really do understand coming from, and sharing that experience and creating that bond on a one-to-one basis and sharing some of this stuff like we are today. From a coaching perspective, I think very crucial, because I've coached a few, again, athletes who've been in my shoes, and I've been able to relate them on a lot of those topics. And I think it's crucial. It's very crucial. Just because something may not look wrong doesn't mean it isn't wrong. And I think having that connection is, again, detrimental, and it really can go a long way to begin having a more open dialogue.
And do you guys also think that there's an element, so that definitely, Anton, just in that the relationship piece, the communication piece being perhaps more candid and less guarded in what you're trying to share with them, would you also say there's that role model piece too, from a Black coach to Black athlete? And then we'll move on to talking about coaches who aren't Black or people of color and their role as an ally, just as the question mentioned there. So sorry, that was a lot, but did you get the first part of what I was saying?
Yeah, no, for sure. I guess for that, I would say that I agree to that. There's a lot more of a candid conversation. I can't really expand more on that. For coaches that are not Black, and how to really help with the allyship, I really think it starts with making it important. There's a lot of the go, a coaching perspective, in terms of, you got to train here, you got to prepare for this opponent, a lot of things that on the day-to-day that are, so for the ultimate goal is to win a national championship for us at the Dinos. But I think it's equally important to understand that for A1 as a unit, as a group, have you established that, can we qualify this issue right now? Can we have those open dialogues, and setting that from the moment that you get your team together for the first time, I think is probably one of the best, and having an open conversation. No issue that any Black player faces should not be dismissed, or it should not be described as minuscule. I think that probably the best way I would answer that question.
For sure. Did anyone else have a burning Temmie?
Yeah, I was just to answer that question about what can non-Black coaches do. A little bit of a story, but I've only been lucky enough to have one Black coach in my whole sporting career, and he was a wrestling coach. He took the time to get to know my family in the summer that he coached me and that I was an athlete for him. He came over, met my parents, met my sisters. We had fun, we had dinners. And I was so fortunate to have that experience because it showed that he cared about me, not just as an athlete. And he wanted to know what other kind of challenges potentially I could be facing outside of sports that, cannot necessarily be understood by non-Black coaches. And that was very eye-opening for me, because moving on, I have had coaches that I didn't feel took the time to actually learn about me. They just put me in this one box as athlete. Who the hell cares what she's got going on after that? And, sometimes you think, well, not all coaches do that, but they do. If you're a good coach, you do want to know who your athletes are, what they've got going on, how you can accommodate coaching and their lifestyle and what else they've got going on with them being present here, because sometimes there could be other stuff going on way bigger than what you can understand that they're dealing with, that they can't choose to leave outside the door when they're coming onto the field or onto the court or onto the mat. And I've definitely seen both sides of, I don't want to say like bad coaching versus good coaching, but in terms of coaching a Black athlete versus not coaching a Black athlete. And I've definitely felt on teams where I've seen my coaches, they really know my other white teammates. They know their families, they know their names. And when it comes to me, like I've been on your team for 5, 6, whatever years, and you can't even name my parents. You don't know their first name. It really just kind of shows that, you've kind of just labeled and only cared about me because I'm an athlete, because of the attributes attributed to my skin color that I bring and that I, use to benefit our team.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, you muted.
And all of that, sorry, it's really just showing that, you care and getting to know your athletes even more and understand that there might be other stuff going on that you just might not be able to understand, and try to understand, try to get to understand those things, educate yourself, have conversations with them, be open-minded. You can't, I think in general, in order to continue to be an amazing citizen of this world, you have to be willing to want to change, want to grow. And in order to do that, you have to have challenging conversations. You have to try and challenge your mindset and your biases. And you can't do that if you're not having certain conversations.
Definitely. And just to that piece, I think, I'm not sure about the rest of you, but I think I can make the assumption that we've all, with the killing and murder of George Floyd and the spark of this movement that has been, that instigated a lot around the world. A lot of these conversations have been had. Would you all agree with that?
For sure.
Right. And I think there's that line where you have to check with yourself and you have to check on your own mental health and how you're doing. And, you want to allow for these tough conversations, and you do want to be all ears for these people and I don't mean to say these people in that way. And when I say these people, I mean everyone. I truly do, because I think that the tough ones need to be had, and there is that level of that hurt that you go through, but I think that their conversations, just like you say, Temi, they're necessary, and they're tough for us, but just that fine line of, okay, do I have the energy to put into this conversation right now? You know what I mean? Did Jared, sorry?
Yeah, I wanted to just add to this topic. Like, it's a different way of looking at it. I agree 100% with the relatability. I think that's huge for athletes, for young athletes, young Black athletes, to have somebody that they can relate to, conversation-wise, motivation-wise, where they can understand your background. But something that I've also thought about is just like having a Black coach or a Black manager as a young athlete, for me, would make me feel like, you know what, one day I can do that too. One day I can be I can be a coach. Because predominantly through my life, most of my coaches have been Caucasian or from different backgrounds, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I haven't had many Black coaches or Black GMs or Black staff or trainers or physios, or, you know what I mean? So the more Black people you see in these roles, not only from a motivational or relatability aspect, it's a motivational aspect from a professional standpoint of, one day I could do that. If he could be, because we all know, like, being a coach is not easy. Being a coach, especially from a university team, you're dealing with scholarship, you're dealing with finances, you're dealing with funds, road trips, you're dealing with personalities, you're dealing with egos, you're dealing with problems off the floor, a lot of stuff, right? So I have a lot of respect for all of those coaches, and they, of course, all deserve to be in those roles. I'm not taking anything away from any of them. But, if we're able to see 1, 2, or 3 more Black or different colored ethnicities in those positions, as a young athlete, that gives you the confidence to say that, one day I can do that too. Or one day I can potentially be the AD of University of Calgary. I can be, you know what I mean? Opposed to, well, I'm an athlete, my coach is white, and all my coaches are white, and that's it. You know what I mean? So from that that other perspective of it, I think representation of seeing yourself, right? You're seeing yourself. It's just like Obama. Like, until Obama, no one would think that you could be a Black president. But now, I guarantee you, there's millions of kids who are Black kids in the States who are saying, maybe one day I want to do that. But prior to him, they would never say that because they never saw themselves in that position. You know what I mean? So I also feel like that's another way you can kind of look at it.
Yes, no, for sure. And that, just as you say, someone, some people don't realize the impact it has having someone in a role look like you to relate to, just like you say, I can do that one day. Exactly. There are a few questions in the box, but I think this talking point that we have will segue into, and we can address more questions that we have from our listeners here. So this one is again like a segue, but I think we should just be specific right now. So how do you think Black coaches or team staff improve the experience? Oh, sorry, we just said that. The next one here, tell us about a time where a teammate or a coach or a parent had made a negative comment about your race, whether intentional or unintentional. How did you handle it? How do you wish you handled it? And, you know, there may be many stories, and maybe there are things that we don't want to bring up right now, and that's totally fine. But if anyone wanted to mention a brief story, and then we'll, talk to those.
I can start us off with that one. When I was in U12 soccer, so being 11 and 12 years old, my team went on a trip to Dallas for a tournament, and I remember we were in the backyard and we were all just playing around, and then this is the first time someone's ever said this to me. My teammate started running around saying the N-word, and I've only ever been the only Black girl on my team for like as long as I can remember, and she would run around, go say it to this person, then she'll come say it to me, and then she'll start taunting me, and then she'll just keep saying it. She said it at least 5 or 6 times, and I was so young that I didn't even I knew it was a bad word, and I didn't really know the origin of it or where it really came from, but I just knew that it was a word that belittled Black people, and she was saying it and kept saying it and saying it, and I remember I just walked away, and I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Like, I just walked away. And if that had happened to me today, I think, honestly, I probably would have lost my cool, but I would have gone to the point where I've gone to the point where you yelling and just getting mad at someone isn't going to change their mindset. It's when you sit down and have a conversation with them and tell them how you feel. So I honestly feel like what I could have done in that situation was, if I had known better, I could have at least told her where it came from, explained how it makes me feel, because back then I just thought, whatever, like I felt outnumbered, because in a team of 18 girls, I was the only Black girl I've played soccer for at least 12 years now, maybe 13, and I just felt outnumbered, and it felt like if I were to complain about something, everyone would just think I'm over-exaggerating, or not everything's about you. It is what it is. Like, just brush it off, blah, blah, blah. And I think that now that I'm more educated and that I understand situations more, that doing that today would bring up so much more anger and like it's disrespect, that I think people need to understand that that word means so much more than you think it is. And yeah, Black people say it, but we say it so that we break it down and make it a better understand, or a better word, I guess. But when other people say it that aren't Black, you say it for a different meaning. You might think you're saying it to be funny, but you honestly, you know you're saying it to hurt, and you know you're saying it to bring us down and to make us belittle us and make us feel as if we're not on the same social level as you, and that we're not on the same just like we're not on the same level. And I think really just that experience, I honestly didn't even tell anyone, but the experience really made me question who I was and question who they were, and how they were being taught at home, and because racism it's not, you're not born racist, it's taught. And I think when people just so freely say the N-word like that, it really just means that they're saying it for a different reason, and it's not to make us feel better in any way. It's like, straight up, whenever someone says it and they're not Black, it literally feels like they're ripping my heart out and throwing it back to the 1920s, back to slavery, back to when I thought my skin color was literally the worst thing it could be. I remember being 6 years old, and I was asked my mom, why am I not white? and really just questioning myself because I saw how my skin color was belittled and how people thought of me differently because of the color that I am instead of the person that I am. And I think that really just, the experiences I've had have honestly put me in different perspectives and different worldviews of people and things that I've seen. So.
Mm-hmm. And it's so tough, even with all of our experiences, you know, hearing someone else even just vocalizing it, yeah, I have no words. And it's something that you should never go through, you know, but it's so ingrained inside in, you know, 400 years, and people will reference, but what about today, what about the future? But the context of those 400 years of slavery, the history, everything builds the context for today, and that is how we can move forward into the future. If we just say what can we do now, what can we do for the future, you know, we have to use the context that we have, and yes, look for progress, look for more equality, but just as you say, it's so much deeper than just a word.
Mm. Yeah, there's a whole different meaning behind it.
Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of questions just on mainly being an ally, being white allies as teammates on and off the court. What can people do to better support teammates? What can fans do? And that in itself, we could speak for hours on and hours just on that alone, and this whole panel alone. And so, and it's, again, we have a talking point on what is something that you wish non-Black athletes and teammates knew about your experience with race. And then next, what does inclusion mean to you, and how do you think we become a more inclusive society? And I know that's a lot, but we can, again, an hour is, you know, we can't cram everything into an hour, but I think those are two really important things to end off, just in terms of the questions, a lot of questions that we've had just now. So firstly, just in terms of allies, being a white teammate, being a white ally on and off the court, does anyone have any big thing? I know we all have big things to say on that, but anyone have anything they'd like to start with?
Yeah, I'll go. Allyship, very, very important, because it is the difference between your Black teammate or your Black athlete feeling alone and feeling like they're part of something bigger than just sports and within the team. I mean, every Black person doesn't think the same. We don't all want, not every Black athlete or every Black person wants you to come to them and ask them, what can I do to be better to you? I mean, you wouldn't go and ask a white person, what can I do to make you feel happier, like, in this situation? You kind of have to use your own devices, research, educate yourself, have conversations. It doesn't have to be with that person, but what are you doing? What kind of conversations are you having with the people amongst you? That may not directly affect me, but it does, because then I know that you're challenging your biases. And when you're coming to me, you're not having ignorant thoughts in your head, even though you're not saying them to me. That goes not just for coaches, it goes to teammates, it goes to fans, it goes to anybody who sees you as an athlete or as more than an athlete and cares about you. That it goes to everybody, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Was there anyone else on that one?
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. Tammy's right. I agree with everything she's saying. I think their piece of that too is look at your own biases, and if you're wanting to, you know, talk about, you know, a box as Black athletes feel like they're in, and, you know, when we're talking about being an ally, don't label us as a Black athlete. Label us who we are. Understand who we are. Understand, you know, our stories. Like, sit down, listen. Don't come to a conclusion of something. Don't think you know something. Just forget everything you think you know, because you don't. And really have an open ear, open heart, and, you know, really think beyond standing up for, you know, everything that's very easily identifiably is wrong, but, you know, be there as a support work at any time. No issue is too small to talk about. And I think understanding your own biases and then having open ears and open heart around this, I think, is really crucial. I think is also a good part of being an ally for that as well.
Mm-hmm. For sure, for sure. And it's even, just as both of you touched on, I think it's so important that, I think it's incredible that we are doing this panel. I think it's incredible the initiatives that companies and corporations and, you know, I think those macro, those big things that are tangible, that these are the steps we're going to take. We're doing this fundraiser for this cause and everything. And then just as you both say, you know, a lot of people who love us and who are for the movement and everything, they want to help and they want to know how to help, which is great. But just as you say, I think it's really important that we boil it down to the micro level. Just as you both said, the conversations that you're having day to day, that you're having with, you know, the Black people in your life, or the challenging ones that you're having with someone who is having potentially discriminatory, racist views or opinions, or aren't thinking with the most open mind, or aren't thinking with the most compassionate empathy or equality. Those are the things that we need to push day to day, so that these things are normalized, so that in 10 years' time we don't need these discussion panels, you know? So yeah, that's just my small take on just the micro level and that importance. And Ruth and Jared, just on the, I guess, a more inclusive society and yeah, just how, you know, tangible potential things, just to go to the questions in our box again, that we think would be interesting or effective.
Like, again, for me, like when I look at sports, I just think, I've always thought that since I was a young kid, it's just complete inclusion of every race. Like when I was younger, I used to watch the World Cup, and to this day, I watch the World Cup for soccer every summer whenever it comes around. And regardless who is playing, you know, you're going to see fans, you're going to see, you know, a Black person, you're going to see a white person, you might see a Hispanic person, you might see an Indian person, you might see a Chinese person, because they love the game, right? But that's the inclusivity of all races, because we're celebrating something that we love together. You know what I mean? We're bringing everybody together, regardless if you're rich, regardless if you're broke, regardless if you work at a Fortune 500 company, or if you work at the gas station, or regardless if you're Black, white, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's what inclusion is. But that's in the sports world, right? But when we step out of that, I believe we still have to have that mindset of like, we are all one, we are all people, we are all the same. You know what I mean? And I feel like when you start getting into deeper conversations, like, you know, I've had friends of mine who, you know, they put a resume together, and just based on their name and their last name, they don't even get an opportunity. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, why? You know what I mean? Like why? You know what I mean? So I feel like inclusion just has to be, it's more than a relatability, because it's more like, if it doesn't affect you, it's like, why would you act on it? You know what I mean? Like, I know when the George Floyd thing happened, I was pretty, like, you know, that hit me pretty deep. And to this day, I was thinking, like, what can I do to help? You know what I mean? And that doesn't necessarily mean giving money or whatever, but it was having conversations with people about it, right? And that was with white people, that was with Black people, that was everybody. But it's like, if you don't understand it, if you can't relate to it, and if it doesn't affect you, then a lot of times we just, you know, turn the cheek. You know what I mean? But inclusion means, well, if I'm your friend and I'm white and my friend is Black and he's being involved in everything that's going on with George Floyd and all the racial injustice, everything that's going on, I have to include that. I can't just avoid that. You know what I mean? Like, and I think the tough part of it is, like, when we start talking about like white privilege and things like that, You know, it's almost as if we're putting pressure on these other races to help us, but it's not. It's more just about understand or try to understand or try to relate, because you wouldn't want these things happening to you, right? And I feel like that's a way to look at it. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is, but I always think of sport. I think of sport as bringing everybody together. And then I feel like, how can we have that same mentality when it comes to real life? How can we have that same mentality when it comes to having an opportunity to go to school or to get a scholarship or to get a job or to get a resume or to get an interview? You know what I mean? How can we have that same inclusion for everybody and not strictly, okay, well, this name, no, that's not going to work. You know what I mean? Or, oh, that's a young Black kid and he's walking into the store. Like, for example, a friend of mine who played on the basketball team with me, we spoke about this around this time that George Floyd passed and stuff like that. We were talking about white privilege. And he was saying about a time that me and him both went to a mall and we were going to go into one of the stores. And I was telling him, like, you know, like every time I go to this store, like if I have my bag on, they make me take it off immediately. And he was like, what do you mean? It's like, you can keep your bag on. He's like, every time I walk in here, I have my bag on and I just walk in clean and I do what I have to do. But like, I never even knew that, you know, but they're obviously making me take it off because I'm Black and I'm young and maybe I'm going to steal something and he's not, you know what I mean? So like, these are the types of conversations that we had that made me say, okay, you know, he's at least trying to understand where the things that I go through in life, you know what I mean? Like it's stuff like that happens on a day-to-day basis that I think we don't think about sometimes.
And it's exactly that, the kind of, it's not the pressure piece of you have white privilege so you must do this. It's exactly that. It's the recognition and the I'm gonna take a step back and just listen. And we should tie off slowly, but Ruth, did anyone have anything to close with, anything that they would regret not saying if given the opportunity again? Take the wheel.
I just wanted to add my quick meaning of inclusion. For me, being a a woman of God and a Christian, I honestly think that inclusion to me basically is John 3:16. For God to love the whole world that He gave His only begotten Son. It doesn't say for God so love white people, for God to love Black people, for God to love Asians, anyone. It says for God to love the world. And I think that scripture for me really just puts inclusion into perspective, that we're all made to be in one association. We're all made to be in one togetherness. We're all made to be just one in God. And I think that inclusion is meant for us to bring people in, no matter who they are, no matter what they've been through, no matter what circumstances they have, and to understand each other instead of to judge each other, because we're all so quick to judge people before they even say something, like, oh, this person's Black, they're probably going to do this and that and this and that. And like Jared said, how he was told to take off his backpack. We're so quick to judge before we even understand the situation. And I think inclusion is just understanding people and understanding how certain things make people feel in certain problems, and how we can switch and resolve those issues in this modern society that we're facing with now, with all the BLM movements and protests and just questions and that people have right now as well.
For sure. No, that was beautifully said. Thank you. Was there anyone else in official closing, that any last comment that they wanted to make? Everyone's content. Oh, Anton?
Yeah, the only thing I just want to add is, and it goes back to my time as a Dino, and I think just in terms of the inclusion piece of it is, I like to think of, you know, everyone who goes to this university, alumni or just starting, we're all a team. We are all a family. And I think the saying that we had in our locker room, Coach Harris and Coach Cannella, that always instilled in us is team. Together, everyone achieves more. It's an old saying, I know that's been passed around, but that's what we lived by. When we walked into that locker room, we went to go do things together. If we're going to go win a national championship, we're going to do it together. If we're going to lose, we're going to do it together. And I don't see a difference between what has happened in that locker for my 5 years at this university to this conversation right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that everyone has a role to play in this, and together we can achieve great things. And it all really, you know, as Jared mentioned, if something's happening with your teammate, are you just going to let them sit there and take it? No, you're not. Are you going to let that someone's going to mess with your family member? Absolutely not. Whatever we all go through as a team, as a family, as a unit, we can do it together. And you're doing that by loving one another, caring for one another, and, you know, just go sell out and be that person to be and support that person for anything they go through. It could be the smallest thing, it could be the largest thing. The cup of suffering takes shapes and forms of every single person, so we have no right to judge. If my teammate's going through it, if my family member's going through it, I'm not showing up by myself. I'm showing up with 50 other people. And I think that's where we need to get to a point. And I think we're turning that page. And I think that if we want to talk about inclusion, it's not about being a team, like family. And that's all I'm going to end off with that.
I love that. And thank you so much. That's, again, beautifully said. Thank you so much. And just, as you say, just with that team, with that family, it's not camaraderie of just the Black community. It's, we need community. Just as you say, we need everyone to uplift everyone. So I just, thank you all who have stayed on later than planned. You can tell I could stay in this Zoom meeting with you all for another 2 hours easy. I'd need a snack, but honestly, so just thank you all firstly so much for being here, for voicing things that, you know, this is never easy. So yeah, thank you so incredibly much to our panelists, Jared, Ruth, Temi, and Anton, for sharing some of your story and your perspectives with everyone today. So thank you again. The Dinos Diversity Series will continue 2 weeks from tonight, Tuesday, September 29th, with a panel on Indigenous inclusivity within athletics. We hope you'll be able to join us then as well. We'd like to hear what you thought about today's program, so please provide your feedback in our short poll, and that will be on your screen shortly. So our theme for Alumni Month is There's More to Learn. Whether you are looking to get advice, give advice, or open to both, UCalgary Mentor Link will get you started. By joining, you will gain access to a community of career-minded alumni who are looking to create career connections as well as share knowledge and experience. We know that many of our alumni have a vast amount of knowledge to share. That's why we're asking you to share your professional experience and expertise as a mentor. UCalgary Mentor Link offers an easy-to-use platform with a simple mission: to connect alumni and students for mentorship, networking, and professional development opportunities. If you're interested in learning more and want to sign up as a mentor or as a mentee, please visit alumni.ucalgary.ca. Thank you once again for joining us today. And again, a recording of today's program will be available on the Alumni Month website by the end of the week. Enjoy the rest of your evening and go Dinos.